During World War I, hundreds of thousands of Assyrian Christians in southeast Anatolia and Persia were slaughtered and expelled by the Ottoman Empire and some Kurdish tribes. This tragic and atrocious occurrence is known as the Sayfo, or Assyrian Genocide. Religious hatred, political aspirations, and land greed were the driving forces behind this genocide. The Assyrian people endured unspeakable horrors, including forced conversion, mutilation, torture, and rape. So join us as we dive into the unspeakable things that took place during the Assyrian Genocide. Between 1843 and 1846, the Assyrian Christians in the Hakari region of southeastern Anatolia were the victims of a series of atrocities perpetrated by the Ottoman Empire and its Kurdish allies. More than 10,000 Assyrians were killed, and many more were taken as slaves as a direct result of the massacres. According to popular belief, the Assyrian tribes, under the leadership of Patriarch Shimun XVII Abraham, put up resistance, which led to these massacres. In 1843, the Emir of Bhutan, Bedir Khan Bey, invaded Hakari with a strong army of Kurds and Turks and assaulted the Assyrian villages and the Patriarchate of Kudshanis, marking the beginning of the killings. He issued decrees that monasteries and churches be destroyed, that the Assyrians be converted or killed, and that women and children be enslaved. But the monstrosities didn't end there. Bedir also wrote to Nuhrullah, the Emir of Hakari, warning him that if he didn't help him eliminate the Assyrians, he would meet the same fate. Nuhrullah accepted the offer, and the Hakari region was split between the two Kurdish emirs, who maintained their campaign of looting and slaughter until 1845. In 1846, the Ottoman governor of Mosul, Mohammed Pasha, came as a ray of hope for the Assyrians, but it turned out to be a guise. He attempted to reinstate Ottoman authority in the province, but the atrocities resumed. Pasha claimed that he wanted to protect the Assyrians, but in reality, he wanted to plunder the property and money of the land. A combined Ottoman, Bedir Khan Bey, and Nuhrullah force besieged the Assyrian mountain fortresses. But despite them being outnumbered and outgunned, the Assyrians battled bravely, without any foreign help. They lost a lot of people and had to run to the mountains, where they froze and starved. The Ottomans and the Kurds seized and slaughtered any Assyrian they could find, while others fled to the surrounding territories of Persia and Urmia. The Hakari massacre was a forerunner to the more well-organized and widespread genocide that the Assyrian people would experience in the 20th century, and one of the darkest catastrophes in their history. In 1914, the Ottoman Empire entered World War I as an ally of Germany and Austria-Hungary, and fought against the British, French, and Russian empires. The empire wanted to get back the land it had lost in the Middle East and the Caucasus. They also wanted to stop the nationalist movements of the Christian minorities living under Ottoman rule, like the Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians. The Ottoman government began its genocide against the Armenian people in 1915, and about 1.5 million Armenians perished as a direct result of the genocide at the hands of the Ottoman armies and their Kurdish allies. Also subjected to the Ottoman genocide were the Assyrians. The Kurds, loyal to the Ottomans and eager to extend their territories, had long been at odds with the Assyrians. Following their defeat in World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, and Great Britain and France took control of its Middle Eastern territories, giving the Assyrians another hope as they sought help and protection from the Allies, while continuing to resist Ottoman and Kurdish attacks. Turkish troops were finally pulled out, and the Assyrians were free from the horrors. Or so they thought. Due to Enver Pasha and Nuri Pasha's refusal to accept the armistice and continued fighting against the British and Russians in the area, a pro-Ottoman and pro-Turkish movement in Azerbaijan under the leadership of the Musavat Party emerged. With the Ottoman Empire as an ally against the British and the Russians, the Musavat Party declared Azerbaijan's independence in May 1918, and hostilities towards Armenians and Assyrians continued. On September the 14th in 1918, Ottoman Azerbaijani forces took Baku, bringing the war to an end after roughly 3 weeks. About 30,000 Armenians and Assyrians in Baku were killed in atrocities by Ottoman Azerbaijani soldiers during and after the fight. After this, there was some relief when the British forces took control of the region. As part of the ongoing brutality against Armenians and Assyrians, Ottoman forces and some Kurdish tribes were killed and forced to leave Assyrian and Syrian Christians living in southeastern Anatolia and Persia's Azerbaijani province. The mass killing of Assyrian civilians started when the Ottoman Empire took over Azerbaijan in January 1915 and continued until May 1915. During that time, both Ottoman forces and pro-Ottoman Kurds killed many people. Ottoman troops coming back from Persia took a detour and worked with local Kurdish groups to kill all the Armenian and Assyrian Christians living in Bitlis province. It says that the violent ethnic cleansing of Assyrians in the Hakari mountains was a consequence of a series of government decrees, some of which predated the war, thus indicating a long-standing intention to remove them. The Ottomans killed or sent away thousands of Assyrians as part of the Bitlis Cleansing. The order was to either convert to Islam or be killed. The survivors ran away to nearby places like Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Russia, but they were persecuted and hurt even more there. The Ottomans' cleansing of the Bitlis of Assyrians was one of the worst crimes against the Assyrian people. It was a precursor to the more organized and widespread genocide they would face in the 20th and even the 21st century. ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and Sham, is a Sunni extremist group that has persecuted and slaughtered many religious and ethnic minorities in Iraq and Syria, including Assyrian Christians. When ISIS took over Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city, in June 2014, they gave Christians until July the 19th to convert to Islam, pay a tax, or evacuate the city. Many Christian homes, churches, and landmarks were also looted and destroyed by ISIS. Several Assyrian towns in the Khabur River Valley in Syria were invaded by the group on July 2014, leading to the deaths of 4 Assyrian fighters and the abduction of their people. Later, ISIS asked for a ransom of $100,000 per captive. Dr. Abdul Masai Enwiya, Ashur Abraham, and Bassam Michael were 3 Assyrian prisoners whose beheading was captured on camera and disseminated by ISIS in October of 2014. If the ransom was not paid, ISIS threatened to execute further hostages. The Ottomans and the Kurds forcibly deported the Assyrian people during World War I as part of the larger Christian genocide in the Ottoman Empire, and they starved them to death. It resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Assyrians from various Christian sects and regions of Anatolia and Persia, as well as their forced relocation and privation. The Ottoman authorities and their Kurdish allies persecuted the Assyrians for several reasons, but none could justify the horrors the population went through. Some of the most reliable sources come from the elderly Assyrians who survived the genocide and their descendants. According to many, the Ottomans committed this atrocity because the Assyrians perceived disloyalty, their ethnic and religious identity, and their land and resources. Those were brutal times for the population. The Ottomans and the Kurds regularly massacred, went on death marches, raped, committed slavery, and famine. And these are just some of the atrocities committed against the Assyrians, leading to their annihilation or dispersal over the Middle East and beyond. And the worst part is that no one dared to stop them. German military and diplomatic officials stationed throughout the Ottoman Empire during World War I were eyewitnesses to the atrocities committed against Assyrians and other Christian minorities by the Ottoman government. While some German officials tried to intervene to stop these atrocities, others looked the other way, or even took part in them. Germany's economic and geopolitical interests in the area, such as the Berlin-Baghdad Railway, had an impact on the country's policies and actions. The Ottoman authorities and their Kurdish allies uprooted hundreds of thousands of Assyrians from their homes, sent them on foot to the Syrian desert, and subjected them to starvation, thirst, illness, and massacres. But that wasn't enough to satisfy the empire. The death marches were designed to eradicate the Assyrian population, who were viewed as a threat to the Ottoman Empire because of their ethnic and religious identity. Up to half of the pre-war Assyrian population perished during the death marches, and their entire culture and history in Anatolia and Persia were obliterated. The Ottoman government issued orders to deport all Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks residing in the eastern provinces of the Ottoman Empire in 1915, the same year that these death marches started. Ottoman soldiers, gendarmes, and Kurdish irregulars conducted these death marches. and they frequently plundered, raped, tortured, and killed the Assyrian deportees. Different routes were taken in the death marches, depending on where the Assyrians originated. The length of the death march was measured in months, not kilometers. Exhaustion, starvation, thirst, exposure, and disease claimed the lives of many Assyrians, and the ones who survived these rough conditions faced brutal ends. Many met their ends at the hands of predatory animals, or even an enemy tribe. Surviving Assyrians were either left to perish in the Syrian desert at the end of the death marches, or deported to detention camps, something that no one would want to experience. Although many countries called this atrocity a genocide, Turkey has been persistent in calling the deportation a necessity for safety during a war. During the Assyrian Genocide, children living in the Urmia region under Ottoman rule endured extreme hardship and cruelty. About 100,000 Assyrians lived in more than 300 villages in the region. After Ottoman soldiers and their Kurdish and Azerbaijani allies stormed the Urmia region in January 1915, Assyrians became subjected to systematic killings. Among the most defenseless casualties of the genocide were the Assyrian children. Some fell victim to the blade, while others succumbed to hunger. Some kids got cut up or sold into slavery. Some Assyrian children survived by hiding out in the mountains, in caves, or missionary complexes run by the French and Americans in Urmia city. However, they were in constant fear of enemy attacks, as well as starvation, cold, and sickness. According to one eyewitness account, the Turks and Kurds rounded up all the children between the ages of 6 and 15 and took them to police headquarters. They herded the helpless children to the peak of Ras el Hajar, where they brutally slaughtered them before tossing their bodies into a deep pit. Many of them had to bear the agony of watching the crimes committed against their people and the loss of parents, siblings, and other loved ones. Additionally, some Assyrian children were either forced into becoming Muslims or adopted by Muslim families, which caused them to lose sight of their heritage. Later on, some of them attempted to return to their original towns or families, but they were met with hostility and prejudice. Some of them never found their way back to their roots or their religion. About half of the pre-war Assyrian population was thought to have been slaughtered in the Assyrian Genocide. It was a forerunner of the Holocaust and is regarded as one of the first contemporary genocides. The Turkish government and other nations continue to ignore and deny the existence of this. And that wraps up the terrible details about the atrocities committed against the Assyrians. Comment down below which disturbing event had your jaw on the floor and which had you curling your toes. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.